Assalamu alaikum, this is me Atisham and you're watching my YouTube channel RILS The Lingua Expert. I'm the expert trainer of IELTS, PTE, OET, IELTS Life Skills and other English language proficiency exams. In this video, we're going to learn a very important and key concept in English grammar, which is conditional clause. Before I move ahead, I just do tell you that I have previously recorded videos with respect to clause and its types, and mainly we discussed dependent and independent clause. So under dependent clause we find three types. One is noun clause, the second one is adjective, and the third one is adverbial clause. So under adverbial clause we have this category which we call it conditional clause. So I do request you to watch all the previous videos with respect to clause and its types in detail so that you can get to fully understand the concept of conditional clause, which is most commonly misused by most of the non-native speakers. So let's begin today's class with the conditional clause. What is conditional clause? Conditional clause, basically this is also known as if clause, because the most common conjunction that you see in the conditional clause is if. So they introduce a condition in a sentence, and based on that condition something else would take place. So according to its definition, that conditional clause is a type of adverbial clause which is used to express that the action in the main clause will only take place if a certain condition is fulfilled. So this is based on the condition which you present in the conditional clause, and based on that condition something else happens. So there are certain various sub-conditions that we have to get to fully understand within this particular format, but I tell you that this conditional clause expresses that one thing is contingent over something else, and there are certain subordinating conjunctions that we use in order to structure if clause or conditional clause. So mainly we talk about three different conjunctions. One is since, the second one is if, which is the most common, and the third one is unless. So these are the three conjunctions that we would use. So there are four subcategories of this particular clause. The first type 1, is known as zero conditional clause. Type 2 is first conditional clause. Type 3 is the second conditional clause, and type 4 is the third conditional clause. So we have four subtypes of clause. Now let's talk about the first type, which is the zero conditional clause. Now zero conditional clause refers to the present real situation. Okay, so present real conditions, if you mention within a sentence and they introduce certain condition which is based on the general, universal, common and scientific truths and facts. So all those facts which you mention in a sentence which are based on common sense, general belief or scientific truths, we use this first zero conditional clause. To structure this particular type, we use the formula if is a conjunction, and after if we use the present simple, and which is the dependent clause, and for the independent clause we also use present simple. So the formula that you can see here, if plus present simple plus present simple. So two of the present simple we will take, and along with one conjunction, that is if, which introduces the condition in the sentence. So I'll give you three examples so that you can clearly get to understand. Now the first example, if you freeze water, it turns to ice. So this is a condition, if you freeze water, and that is the common sense, right? If you do so that thing happens. So if you freeze water, it turns to ice. So this is the actual fact, and then you see a condition that if you do this thing happens. Now the second example, if you heat metal, it expands. So this is obviously proven scientifically that if you heat metal, it expands. So if you heat metal, this is a conditional clause. Now the third example, if you sweat too much, you dehydrate. So if you sweat too much, this is actually the conditional clause. You dehydrate, this is the universal, general, common, or truth or fact. So this is why we categorize it in this particular type of the conditional clause, which we call it zero conditional clause, which express the present real condition. Now let's talk about the type 2. Type 2 is the first conditional clause, and this clause refers to future real condition. This clause refers to possibility, prediction, promises, and cause and consequence. In order to structure this particular category, you need a formula of if plus present simple plus future simple. So remember that in this particular type, you use one present simple with if, which is the conditional clause, and the main clause will be used in the future simple. Whereas in the zero conditional clause, you use both dependent and independent clauses in present tense. But here you keep the conditional clause in the present and the independent clause or main clause in the future simple. So remember, most of the non-native speakers, they commit mistake to show future two actions. They use future simple for two of the clauses, both dependent and independent. But here you have to keep the conditional clause in the present, whereas the main clause in the future. So let's get to have few examples so that you can fully understand. The first example, if you work hard, you will succeed. So if you work hard, this is the condition. In the future, if it is fulfilled, so that thing will happen in the future. So if it is fulfilled, so this is based on possibility, probability. The second example I would like to quote here, that if it rains, we will stay home, right? So if it rains, so this is based on prediction, probability, that if it rains, we will stay at home. So we will stay at home is an independent clause, whereas the conditional clause is if it rains. And the third example, if she doesn't hurry, she will be late to her office. So if this thing happens, if she doesn't hurry, so she will be late to her office. So that is the conditional clause if she doesn't hurry. Now let's move to the type 3. Type 3 is the second conditional clause, which refers to the present unreal conditions. And remember, these present unreal conditions, or any sentence which consists of any unreal or hypothetical condition, so that type of sentence, according to mood, it is categorized as subjunctive mood of a sentence, where you present something or express something unreal. You talk about unreal things. So this is why we call it subjunctive mood of the sentence. So this is the category, the third type, which we call it the second conditional clause, and it is used to show hypothesis, unlikely situation, and unreal present situations or conditions. To make this particular clause, you have to take the formula of if plus past simple. So remember, even to show unreal present situation or condition, you use the past formula, and most of the time, like, you use was in the past with he, she, it, or any singular noun, and I as well. But here, when you refer to subjunctive mood of a sentence, when you talk about unreal situation, so you don't use was with them. You use, instead of was, were. Like, if I were you. So if I were you, this will not be made into if I was you. That goes incorrect in subjunctive mood. But in indicative mood or indicative mood, you don't need to use were with them. But here in subjunctive, you have to keep in mind that you're gonna use were with all these: he, were, she, were, it, were, and I were. Now let's get to have the formula. Here you have if plus past simple, and after past simple the main clause will be constructed as with this formula that you can see: subject plus would plus first form of the verb and plus extension. So extension is the extended part after subject and a verb, whatever you use, either complementation, adverbial or object, anything which comes after verb phrase or subject, that is known as extension. So you use the main clause with this formula: subject plus would plus first form of the verb plus extension. So let's get to have 3 examples so that you can clearly get to understand. Number 1 example: if I had money, I would buy a car. So at this moment, if I'm having money, so I will buy a car. This means that, but you say you don't have that money to buy a car. So this refers to unreal situation and unreal condition. So you say if I had money. Remember the past tense, not have money. Okay, so in this case you say if I had, the second form of have and has, money, I would buy a car. So you won't say that I buy a car, I would buy a car. The second example I would like to quote here: if I were you, I wouldn't do this. If I were you, I wouldn't do this. So remember, would not and do, the first form you take it, and if I were, so remember I told you that why to use this were with I and he, she, it, even. Now the third example: if he knew her address, he would visit her. So this is the clause where you say if he knew her at the present, so he would visit her, and this is the main clause. I hope this is also clear to you. Now let's move to the last category of the conditional clause, which we call it type 4, and we call it the third conditional clause. Now this is so technical in terms of understanding the difference between the second type and this third type, because the second type refers to unreal present conditions, whereas this particular type refers to past unreal conditions. So remember, this is a difference. The earlier one presents present unreal conditions, and here you refer to past unreal conditions. So it is used to refer to hypothetical based condition in the past, or you may say if you have regrets of the past, you can also use this particular condition, which is the third conditional clause. So to structure this particular type, you would use the formula if plus past perfect plus past conditional perfect. Now what is past conditional perfect? You use subject plus would have plus past participle of the verb, which we call it third form of the verb, plus extension. So here you can see the formula that we use if plus past perfect, and in the past perfect we have the formula subject plus had, HAD, plus third form of the verb, which we call it past participle form of the verb, plus extension. And afterwards, when you construct the main clause, you would take subject plus would have, and then you would take past participle again, verb, and then extension. So this formula will help you to construct this type. So let's get to have 3 examples again and to get to fully understand. Now the first example: if you had worked hard, you would have passed your exam. It means that you haven't cleared your exam and now you have flunked in it, or you have failed the exam. So your father or your teacher says to you that if you had worked hard, you would have passed your exam. So you refer to some regrets or something that already has happened in the past, and for showing that you structure with this formula which I have earlier mentioned. Now the second example: if I had found her address, I would have sent her an invitation. And the last example is: if my friend had driven carefully, he wouldn't have had the accident. So he wouldn't have, and then we need the third form, had, because have third form and second form is had, he wouldn't have had the accident if he had driven carefully. So this is the concept of conditional clause. It's very complicated for most of the non-native speakers. I hope that I clearly made you understand, and along with, unless you may sometimes use but, so I won't give you this book unless you visit me. This is the condition. If you come to me or you visit me, I will give you this book. In this case, unless can also make a condition. So I hope this video is clear to all of you. If you have found my video informative with respect to clause, and I have also recorded previously videos with respect to non-clause, adjective clause, and some of the categories of adverbial clause, which I talked about: time clause, clause of place, and clause of reason. So I do recommend you to please watch all those videos, like and share my channel, and also subscribe to it. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Allah Hafiz.